Hello, everyone. Welcome to Stories That Matter. I am Melody Ann, your host. I am also the founder of Nutritious Truth, where we help businesses tell stories that matter. And today I want to talk about your voice and your voice in storytelling and how you can use your voice to create an engaging story, whether that's a TED Talk or whether you are in a sales call or whether you're even in just a meeting. And so today I'm talking to voice and speaking coach Danielle Benzon, who has devoted her life to exploring the agility and power of the voice body instrument. She is passionate about creating space for authentic human communication and unlocking the hidden potential within each speaker. Let's welcome Danielle. Hi, Danielle. How are you today?
Hello, I am well. I may freeze every now and again, so I do apologize if I do. Thanks for having
Yes,
me, Melody.
you are the guest furthest, like the furthest away guest I've ever had. Tell us where you are.
So I'm currently in South Africa, down the south coast, kind of closest to the city Durban, but not that close. Um, yeah, I'm staying at my dad's house, so there's all sorts of ambient noise. I don't have a new headset yet, so you might hear the ocean, you might hear some bats, you might hear some dogs. There's all sorts of wonderful wildlife going on down here.
That's amazing. Okay, I'm super excited about interviewing someone as far away as you are. All right, so first of all, I just want to say oral storytelling is not like reading aloud. So I used to read to my kids, but that's not the same as telling a story, is it?
It's very different if you want to think of something that's more performative, because especially when we're reading to kids, we're trying to get them to sleep a lot of the time. And part of the way that we kind of remember things and the way the human kind of brain works to remember things is using patterns and using rhythms. And so we can very easily get stuck, and that's why we like songs so much. We can really easily get stuck in a rhythm, and that becomes kind of storytelling voice. Once upon a time this happened, and then la la la, and then blah blah blah. And you can hear that I'm not present, you can hear that I'm not immediately with you. And so the struggle with storytelling is to stay in a narrative, but to fight against that storytelling voice, that voice that just kind of distances us from the person who's speaking, and it kind of lulls us into sleep. And it's unfortunate because those patterns are part of what help us remember things, but those patterns are also part of what disconnects us from our audience. And so staying fresh and alive when you speak, when you're doing storytelling, is very important.
Hmm. That's why I fall asleep listening to podcasts. Okay, got it.
Potentially.
Great. So let's talk about vocal elements that will make a story engaging.
Right. So, oh, I've already forgotten what I was going to say. I'm sorry. It's been a crazy day. So vocal elements that make a story engaging. I wanted to talk about three different things. The first was pausing. So there's a difference between pausing for grammar and pausing for drama. So there's pauses, and then there's your vocal tone, your vocal variety, what brings life into your voice. And I've forgotten the other one, Melody. You're going to have to tell me.
I bet it's characters.
Characters, thank you, which falls under vocal variety. So you can forgive me for forgetting my talking points. But characters specifically, I like to separate out of vocal variety because I think there's so much opportunity for character in story. And so I like to keep it separate from vocal variety, although it is technically does fall under that umbrella.
Right. So since we're in characters, let's talk about characters. So what do I do with my voice?
Well, so when we're going into character voice, a lot of people think that they have to really overact. They have to overdo a character and give some sort of stereotype, and that can be quite intimidating. And it's not nearly that complicated. It can be very subtle. So we can use character voice even when we're reading a quote. But often, in conversation, think about how often you use character voice. You're talking to your friends and you're complaining about maybe your boss, and you're like, and my boss went, wah, 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 you know, or, oh, I want to do this today. We have all these voices already in our repertoire that we use in casual conversation when we're talking about other people. And so you've actually got this whole arsenal already. But even if you don't want to use those, just think of changing your voice just very slightly. So it could be going up a tiny bit in pitch or going down a tiny bit in pitch, or just something like some small change. It can be very subtle. So one of the most common ones is just to go up or down in pitch. So if I'm speaking as the narrator and I'm talking as the narrator, and then maybe I want to be myself, but myself as the character, I might be myself as my character, just a little bit higher in pitch. So I'm like, hey, this is me talking in character. And then I'll come back to narrative voice, which is my true voice. And then I meet a friend on the street and he's feeling a little bit low. So maybe I'll go down into a lower pitch. Hi, Danielle, but it doesn't even need to be that much. It can be very, very subtle. But just subtle changes really help our listeners to orient themselves in the story. So the more we can use character, and even for quotes, even when we're quoting something, you can change your voice just a little bit, and it makes it that much more exciting to listen to.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. And it can be fun too, right? Like, it adds fun, not only just to distinguish, but I always enjoy it. Okay. Let's talk about
dynamic. Yeah.
Yes. Let's talk about dramatic pauses.
Yeah. So the thing about pauses, I think a lot of people are scared of pausing because they're scared of dead air. And dead air is a bad thing. Absolutely. But a pause can be alive. It doesn't need to be dead. So a pause is dead when I am not feeling anything and I'm literally just waiting. So if I choreographed a pause and I know I need to pause here, so I just stop talking. And then I keep talking again. That's not a good kind of pause. That's filled with nothing. But if I have some energy in the pause, if I'm breathing, if I'm alive, if I'm feeling something, then the pause can be very exciting. And so we want to have a life in our pauses. And especially if you're building tension, if you're trying to switch things up or, bring a surprise in, it was a lovely, calm, beautiful day. And then this happened, and you want to have that lovely long pause. Also, like for dramatic pauses, for switches in tone, but also for switches in area, in scene. So every time you change scenes, you need to have a little bit of a pause in there that you can bring a different life to your voice. So we were doing this and it was great. And we had a wonderful evening. The next day, blah, 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 blah. And so you want to have different vocal tones to different scenes as well, and bring a new energy, a new life to a new scene. And having a pause there really helps. Not only does it help the audience kind of feel the white space in your talk. If you're thinking about storytelling almost as a formatted Word document, we want that white space between paragraphs, between titles, between pages. We want that same thing in our breath to make pauses for the audience. But it also, and this is where pausing comes in for vocal variety, it also brings life into your voice. Every time you breathe in, every time you reset, your voice comes to life a little bit more. But now we're moving over into vocal tone and vocal variety.
Yeah, excellent. So let's talk about that. What about vocal variety?
So we need vocal variety in order to be interesting, in order to be engaging. And this is the big difference, because a lot of people will think that patterns are enough. So if I always go up and then I always go down, that's not vocal variety. You're still following a pattern. It can be melodic, but it's not changing with the meaning of the words. It's not changing with the emotion of the words. And that's what I mean when I say vocal variety. You want your voice to change depending on what you're talking about, which is kind of the opposite of storytelling voice. Storytelling voice is very calm, it's very collected, and it's always going to sound the same no matter what I'm talking about. Monotone voice as well, just kind of stuck there. So the opposite of that is vocal variety. And one of the ways that we can make vocal variety is we can separate each idea with a breath. So if I say a whole laundry list on one breath, and this is totally doable. Let's say I'm talking about going to the store. I went down to the store and I bought avocados and tomatoes and potatoes, and then I saw my friend Jane, and she's been to Hawaii and she said it was really great. I can do that all in one breath. It's fine. You can understand it. But it's not very interesting to listen to. Whereas if I said, I went down to the store and I bought avocados and tomatoes and potatoes, and I saw my friend Jane, and she's been to Hawaii and she said it was really great. Now, I'm kind of overdoing it, pausing for every type of grocery. But you can hear how much difference there is in my voice when I just take a second, and it doesn't need to be a big breath if it's only 1 or 2 words. Just take a second to reset my system by breathing in. I give new life. Every time I breathe in, there's a new life to the words. Whereas if I say the whole sentence on one breath, it feels just like one idea. And it's very difficult to bring new life into a clause or a subclause or a word without breathing in. So the easiest way to do it is just to use the breath to separate ideas. That's the first thing for vocal tone. And the easiest, I think, to help us build vocal tone. Do you want me to go into the other two, or did you have questions about that?
Go ahead. I think the other one was relationship with your content.
Yeah, there's 2 more. So having a relationship with your content, especially in storytelling. I mean, this is important no matter what you're doing, but especially in storytelling, because we're working a lot with imagery in storytelling. We're working with metaphor, we're working with pictures. And so your relationship to the thing that you're speaking about is extremely important. So you have to know how you feel about something. And in order to do that, you need to have a picture in your mind's eye. You need to really imagine that imagery. Imagine the imagery. You really need to see the image. So if I'm speaking about, for example, where I'm staying right now, I'm staying at my dad's place. He lives in this little artist studio on the beach, and there's the ocean and the seagulls, and I can hear the sound of the waves all the time. Now I can say that, but I was saying that from a place that didn't have a lot of relationship to it. I was trying really hard not to see what I was talking about to just kind of bring it down. But if you see what you're talking about, so I'm staying at my dad's place, and it's this crazy artist studio with paintings all over it, and I can actually see it now, so I don't even need to imagine in my head. But I do need to imagine the ocean outside, and I can hear the waves all the time, the crashing of the waves. And my voice changes because I have a relationship to what I'm talking about. And it's not a conscious thing. I'm not consciously changing my voice. I'm not going, oh, I'm going to go up a little bit here, or I'm going to go wide a little bit here. I'm not doing that. It's the emotional response to the thing that I see. My emotional relationship is changing my voice. And you can hear that in my voice. Just like if you think about, if you've ever had someone comment on the way your voice changes when you speak on the phone to someone you love, your voice changes because there's a relationship there. Your voice changes when you talk to that cute little kitten, because there's a relationship there and you have a strong feeling about it. And so the more you can have strong feelings about what you're talking about, if it's a scene, if it's an object, if it's, whatever it is as part of your story, the more real it feels to you, the more you can see it in your mind's eye, and the more you can have an attitude towards it, a relationship with it, the more that will bring your voice to life, and the more your audience will see something in their mind's eye. So if I see something very clearly in my mind's eye, my audience will see something in theirs. It won't be the same picture because I'm not psychic, but they will see something. Whereas if I don't see anything, if I don't have a strong connection to my image, they probably won't either. And so that's the way we really conjure up images for our audience.
Yeah. And if my audience can see and smell and hear what I can see and smell and hear, they can feel what I'm feeling, which is that underlying piece, right? Yeah. And the final one.
Yeah. And the final one is, it's kind of funny. People think of it for different reasons. And I want to say that gestures are extremely important, not because of the actual use of gestures, although of course they are useful for the visual aid. But even if you can't see me, even if you can't see my hands, you can't really see my hands now. I'm in this very, very tight frame on StreamYard. But even though you can't see my hands, I'm still talking with my hands. And the reason for that is that it completely changes my voice, it changes my vocal energy. And so, yes, gestures are important, for visual aids and that kind of thing as well. But even if people can't see your hands, it's still important to use gestures because it completely changes the way your voice comes across. It brings life to your voice. Most people think of their voice as just being their vocal folds. But if I only speak from my vocal folds and I don't use the rest of my body and I don't engage my body, my voice isn't very interesting. It gets kind of monotone and it gets kind of flat. Whereas if I use my entire body when I speak and I use my hands to give punctuation or to create space, then it brings my voice to life in a way, in a similar way that the emotional relationship does. It also really physicalizes grammar, especially if you get used to speaking with your hands. Like, a lot of people are very uncomfortable with the hands. They don't know what to do with their hands. And so getting comfortable is the first step. And then once you're comfortable with using your hands, you can find that they're really useful in teasing apart really complicated ideas, really complex information. And you can really use your hands to be, the avocados and tomatoes and potatoes example. So avocados can be up here, and I gotta make sure this is in frame so you can see what I'm saying. So avocados, potatoes, and tomatoes. And so if I orient the ideas in space, or the groceries in space, if I put them in a different place, my voice changes automatically as well. Now, you don't have to use these gestures, especially if people can see you. You can do it off frame or you can do it more subtly. But using that spatial relationship with my body completely changes my voice, and it allows me to communicate more complicated ideas. It allows me to break things down, and it allows my audience to orient themselves more easily within my grammar. So if I'm talking about something complicated, this is over here, and then I'm going to come over and talk about this, but they know that this is still over here. And I'm talking about this and this, but I might reference that, and I'm talking about this. And so they have that spatial relationship that they can hold on to. But my voice also has the spatial relationship. It's not just my eyes or your eyes that have the spatial relationship, but my voice as well. My vocal tone changes depending on where my hands are, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yes. And I know, because I've worked with you as a voice and expression coach. In fact, you even directed when you were living in Vancouver, you even directed my solo show a few years ago. And what I remember when you were directing me, one thing I remember is, instead of saying, okay, now you do this and now you do that, which you think of a director as like telling you, we broke that down. And it's like, well, just do the thing and let's watch what you're naturally doing. You got me to let go of the fear. And so I wasn't standing like this, telling the story, right? And when that happened, I started using gestures and you were noting them. And then through that, you put together something that was very natural and made perfect sense. And now I know how difficult that is for people, because, we often, when we get up on stage, we freeze, right? So tell us, like, that's a great idea. I know that. What else might you suggest?
Well, I mean, the best way is always to let something come out organically, because it's going to be natural and it's going to be you, and it's going to reflect your personality. That's always the best way to do it. But nerves do really make us very rigid and very self-conscious. So if it's possible to put your nerves aside somehow, I have a whole bunch of, I think I've got a whole bunch on my YouTube channel, or maybe on my Facebook, a whole bunch of like exercises to help you just get out of your head and into your body, because you do need to get rid of that self-consciousness in order to be organic. And then I always say, record yourself, measure yourself, and watch what that is. And then you can set it. You can say, oh, I really like what I did. I'll do that again. But because it came out organically, it's never going to feel fake. It's always going to feel real. It's going to feel like you, because you're the one who came up with it originally. But some people, they find it very difficult to do that, or they don't have the time to, record themselves and watch themselves back. And so my advice is, if you're feeling really stressed about it and you do need to kind of choreograph, don't over choreograph. Maybe go through your talk and look for maybe three places where you can very obviously use gestures. So the first one is always, I like to start with a welcome. It's really hard to do in this frame, but I like to open my arms. I like to open my arms and say welcome. When I start a talk, it's welcome or hello. And I start with an open arm gesture. And that gets me going, because it's difficult to bring your arms in once you're speaking. So starting with an open gesture. Now my arms are in play and I don't need to worry about them too much. Something else that you can really look for is, any sort of measurement. So up there, down there, big, small. we don't always think to use our hands for these, but those are great opportunities for you to use a gesture that isn't this, numbers as well. Anytime you're comparing anything, this and this, these two things that are next to each other. And so look for opportunities in your talk where you can very naturally use your hands in a descriptive way that isn't just, this and this and this and this over again, because that does get distracting. And then once you've got like 3 to 5 in your talk, just let your hands be natural the rest of the time. And at least you've got those anchors within the speech.
Love it. Thank you so much. Now, I know when I've been working with you, we used something called a charisma checklist. And when we were organizing this, I asked you if you would please make that available to people, which you did. Thank you very much. And the link is in the description for anyone who wants that. But tell us a little bit, just very quickly, what is the charisma checklist about?
Yeah. So what I find with speakers, one of the biggest challenges, especially at the beginning, is that there's so much. You've got vocal tone, you've got body language, you've got the words that you're supposed to be saying, it's the organization. There's just so much information and you're trying to do it all at once. Mm-hmm. And so speakers can, they'll come off stage and they'll either be like, or off camera, they'll be like, oh, I was really good, or I was really terrible. And they don't know why. And they just have this overall kind of feeling. And that makes it very hard to improve. That makes it very difficult to decide what to work on next or how to get better. And so I like to break it down. So I broke it down into 7 different elements. And so charisma, or stage presence, or magnetism, or whatever you want to call it, I've broken that down into 7 elements so that speakers can really get real about what they're doing well and what they have to improve, because it's never that you're awful. It's not that you were terrible in every way. It's usually just there's one thing that you're focusing on that you didn't do as well as you wanted, and you're ignoring all the things that you did do well. And so it's really important, I think, if we want to grow, we need to learn how to measure ourselves and then gradually take one element at a time and work on that. And that is the key too. If we try and work on everything all at once, it's overwhelming. Too many balls in the air and you're just going to fall flat, and it's going to be discouraging. So instead, take one element. What am I going to work on today? I'm going to work on eye contact today. Fantastic. Just work on eye contact and don't worry about anything else. Today, I'm going to work on gestures. Fantastic. Just work on gestures. And then when you have that piece and you understand how that works, you can put it back into your puzzle, and everything else will still be there as you master each piece. And so it's building it block by block and not trying to do the whole thing all at once. And I find that is definitely the fastest way, even though it feels slower, it's the fastest way for speakers to improve.
Yeah. And I know that when we work together, and I use that, I find it really useful. So thank you very much for making that available to people. I really appreciate that you've done that for me and for us. Yeah. So besides that, where can people get a hold of you?
Well, I'm on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and LinkedIn and what's the other one? Instagram. I'm all over the place. My website is theinspiredspeaker.com.
Right.
And I have events. I have free events for the public every month. I do my best to have one every month. And so, keep an eye out. I have speaker events where you can come out and you can speak. I offer free vocal needs assessments for anyone who has questions. It's not a sales call. It is just, we sit down and we talk about your voice. We figure out what's going on, what your challenges are. And I will always give you at least one actionable next step or exercise to do, because I think it's really important that, whether or not it's not always appropriate for someone to work with me, but I can still help spread some vocal health and some good vocal habits out into the world, even, no matter what. So book me for a free vocal needs assessment. Check out my website, check out my YouTube channel, and find me on social media somewhere.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you, Danielle, for coming and spending some time with us today. I know you're very far away, and you did flicker a couple of times, because I know you are. No, just a flicker. It was great. So thank you very much for coming. And everyone else out there, we will do this in 2 weeks. I'm doing this every other week right now, and I'm hope that you are loving it as much as I am. I love bringing valuable information like this to you. So I'll see you in 2 weeks. And until then, have a great time.